But just like I said before, just very, very briefly, and you can refer to that later if you want more information about it. But one of the things about getting started with an online class that I keep hearing is that to think overall picture, overall design. When you're first planning the course, you want to think about the big goal. And it's what I call backwards design in this session that I did last fall. And that means starting with the very end, beyond your class even, 5 years down the road. You know, what is the big picture goal that you want your students to have taken from this course? In terms of an example, I teach English. So when I think 5 years down the road, what do I want my students to be able to do? On my sheet I had written, I want them to write a letter that doesn't embarrass them, you know, or just that they can make their point plain. And so that was my big picture goal in my basic writing courses when I think from the end backward. So if you would, just take about 1 second, 1 minute, I should say, and think to yourself, and I left a space there for you to write in terms of your own mind, whatever course you're thinking about, have a course in mind and then think, what is my big goal down the road? What do I want my students to be able to do? I'm sorry, I haven't mentioned you.
Kathy Gibson.
Okay. That's okay. We just got started. The next step in backward design, after you figure out what the big goal is to think about when the course is over, and I have to assess the effectiveness of the course and evaluate my students individually. How will I ask them to demonstrate their progress towards this big goal? So that's the next step. The next thing I'll ask you to do is to think about the assessment part of this. How are students going to demonstrate in a measurable fashion that they can do at least part or towards what you want them to be able to do down the road? Think about specifically what you would ask for, whether it be a role play, a product of some sort. Sometimes it can be a test, not always. Hopefully after you've written that, you see a very close tie. You know, in terms of mine, I said I want them to write a letter. My assessment then is to have them write a letter. You know, I want them to do exactly what I want to see them do. So hopefully that seemed to go a little quicker, but most of you put your pens down sooner, so I'm hoping that was because it was easy. I'm going to ask them to do what I want them to do, and that's a good thing. You're moving in the right direction. Then the final thing is where really most of your time or planning happens, and that's with the activities. You have to think about skills. What skills do they need in order to do what I'm asking them to do? Think in terms of prerequisite knowledge. For me, if I want them to write a letter that isn't embarrassing, they're going to need to have sentence structure skills. They're going to need to have some spelling skills, some organizational skills. So these are the little pieces that lead to the big goal. So if you take a second, think about those now. What do they have to do in terms of smaller skills?
Are we filling out the, I'm filling out
You can
the yellow.
either
and some are
one.
doing
It doesn't
the
matter.
white.
Janice, it doesn't matter.
Oh.
These
Okay.
are your resources.
You'll fail if you do the yellow.
So it doesn't matter, we don't have to submit these.
No, these are for you to take with you or throw away or whatever you
Type
need.
double space.
Cheryl, you want credit for this part, huh?
So there's skills and then activities which promote those skills, practices, and that's basically the overall idea of backward design. It's trying to get away from receiving the textbook and starting with chapter 1 and doing all the activities that lead up and then making a test that fit the activities. So it's just going about it from the exact backward of what happens sometimes. If that's even more important in online course development than in regular course development, even though it's a good practice for all course development. But in online, when I talked to Paula Willick, who's been doing some good stuff online with her interpreters, that was the first point she stressed, was you have to start with the end goal, because when you're planning a course online, if you start thinking about the little details and the little activities, she said you will get so overwhelmed. When maybe some of you can attest to that, I don't know how you planned your course, but you can get so overwhelmed with the small details that it's just overwhelming. So I wanted to stress that, first of all, right up front. Anything to add? Those of you who have some experience in this, would you, anything at all? If not, just pipe in when you do. Okay? All right, so, next on the list, also don't be afraid to ask for help. There was something I wanted to do with all of you guys today that had your courses up online, if we were going to be in that room, and when that was have them on the screen, and then if you wanted to point something out about your individual online course, we could put it up on the big screen. I didn't know if it could be done. I didn't know if from the front I could say, okay, I want computer 6 and put it up. So I asked. Turns out it can't be, but we have a, an alternative. And that's the other thing another point that Paula made, that don't be afraid if you have a big idea, but you really can't see the technology behind it or figure out how that's going to happen, to ask in our resources right here, because they have a lot of ideas and can help you with that too. So she wanted me to mention that. And then finally, although it's not a final consideration, but it's last on our list, consider the student way early in the process. This is a big difference, I think, in terms of the upfront planning in an online class. Books, although not normally a problem, things like books can be a problem. The kind of details that usually we're just, this is the textbook I want to use, I'll get it in the bookstore and we'll go forward, and they come in and get the books out of the bookstore. Because students can be at remote locations, perhaps they don't have access to every book, and you might want to check that out a little bit before you get too far into your planning with a certain book. Navigation on your website needs to be very user-friendly, simple, with lots of visual cues, which we'll get to under effective communication as well. But it needs to be very clear and upfront how they get where they're going, and we'll talk about all of these things throughout the rest of the day today, but how they get there, navigating around through the website. And then the technologies that they're going to need to be able to do that. Make sure bandwidth, if you have ideas like videos, or you want to try things that would be really cool, also think about the technology that's going to be required to put those up, whether or not dial-up's going to be able to work or not, time, and then also their competence with technologies, because different students will come in with different competencies and abilities themselves. So just make sure you consider those things early.
I don't think that's our problem to consider as much as it is advising. When they advise a student in an online class who is computer illiterate, to me, that's where it begins. I've had that too. Ms. Bishop, I don't have a computer. I've never used a computer. I don't know how to do email. I'm sorry, but maybe that student doesn't need to be advised into an online section.
That would be the extreme case.
I really try hard for retention and all with my students. I work hard, but how are you going to retain a student, that has been misadvised, and
I think too, there are the students who regard themselves as being computer literate, but really not computer literate as far as actual coursework. It's one thing to be able to use the internet or write email. It's another thing to be able to write an essay on the
right. And so, Janice, what you're talking about, I think, is the extreme case where they've never used a computer or owned one or turned one on. And there are also, as you allude to, shades of gray in terms of their competencies. Yeah. And so I would say work with advisement and let advisement know what competencies are required for your course. How much do they have to be able to do so that they don't misadvise them, and they can't. If a student wants to sign up for an online course, they can talk to them about, these are the kind of things you're going to be able to do. Can you do that? And I realize that gets to be a big task.
I'm going to be the devil's advocate and tell you, I've been on the Learning Resource Committee forever, for years and years and years, and one of the first online teachers, and I know for a fact that Tom Bell has worked with advisement to try to tell them that students need these certain competencies to be enrolled in these classes. And I'm going to tell you, it gets to the point it's out of our hands. And whether once he talks to one person in advisement, if it gets out to the other advisors, because then you'll ask a student, well, who advised you in this class, and you'll get this name or you'll get that name, and I'm just gonna be the devil's advocate and say that we have done that. We have done that, and somehow we still end up every semester with certain, and what I resent is it becomes my problem. The student's contacting me as the instructor, and it becomes my problem when it never should have gotten to me to begin with.
And I'll add to that, in trying to get ready for this self-study, for this online degree, I got to asking Tom Bell, and I said, I can't imagine these advisors don't have some kind of checklist that they're following. He says, well, we did have a checklist, and he had sent it to them.
Yeah.
Well, we found out they weren't using it.
Tom has tried to tell
Well,
them.
and that's sad.
I mean,
It
Tom
is. It's
is
also an
Tom-
assessment question because we need to find out why they're not using it. And if there's a problem with that particular tool, then how can we?
And
develop
Tom has
that
tried to
tool
tell
and do
them
something?
minimum competencies. I know, I'm on that committee, and for some reason, when it gets there, I don't know what happens.
Well, what's really the bottom line? If a student comes in to take Psych 132 and an advisor says, well, this online class, you gotta be really good at computers. Well, I don't know anything about computers, but I can't get in any of the others, so I want in that one. Do they get in?
But I don't think they should be allowed to.
Well, I don't think they should be allowed to
that-
either, but
that
then you're talking
checklist-
about assessing how much computer literacy do they have, and I don't think our
Yeah. Well, then,
advisors are competent enough to do that.
Well,
No,
that's
and
probably an
not
issue.
No offense, man, but
well, plus students can sign up online, so someone could sign up online for your,
Right.
online course, and then they're actually self-advising.
And it goes back to Charles's point about they
Yeah.
think they know more than
Yeah.
they do.
can we put in the catalog, computer literacy required for every one of the courses? Can we do that, online courses?
But then don't you get back into the shades of gray?
I wonder.
What is
Yeah, but
computer literacy?
well, you
Well-
do, but at least then they know.
And I wonder if we could have some sort of an online, say a student, and I don't know, you can tell me if this is possible. Here we go, back to ask for help. But if we could have some sort of an online experience for a student who's considering taking an online course. If you're
Well, we
cons-
already have that, we have the orientation.
Okay,
And
so
I
they have to go
encourage-
and try things, and if
Well, I
they can't
encourage all my
successfully.
They don't
students
have to,
to
but
take
it's
that,
there.
yeah. It's not mandatory, but, and then when you get into the issue, they've taken an online class somewhere else, so then they don't think they need it here, but maybe the platform wasn't Blackboard, and obviously all platforms work a little differently.
I was kind of
Yeah,
hoping
I
this
don't-
online accreditation committee might make some recommendations to the advisement,
They
to
might.
admissions department on what they should be doing to kind of screen students before they sign them up for these classes, because, I mean, it's hard to retain a student when they've been misadvised.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And even if I try and I work myself half to death the first couple of weeks to get them going, they'll get so frustrated we'll end up losing them. And then, you know what I'm trying to say? I wonder if we could, make some recommendations to admissions for.
Well, I
what
think
we
they're
should
supposed
do.
to be trying to use that form again, but, just this morning, I got an email from a student telling me he couldn't log on to Blackboard.
Yeah.
We're a few weeks into the semester, and I emailed back, I said, you better contact Steve McLaughlin ASAP, and
Yeah.
you're behind.
Yeah.
See, that's exactly what I do. I personally, if they don't know how to use a computer, I don't take it as my problem.
Yeah.
I say, call Steve McLaughlin
Mhm.
and consider dropping if you can't figure out how to do the course, because I'm teaching psychology. I'm
Mhm.
not teaching technology.
And well, then you're gonna get into this, but my financial aid, I gotta have this class, my financial aid and stuff. And eventually, I feel like it does become my problem because I take pride in my retention. And when I can't retain them, it's like out of my hands. I don't like that. When we get retention figures, it's like, well, let me explain to you why. I lost this person or these two people, or, and a lot of times it's not my fault I lost a student.
Now, I will say, I have a letter that all my students are to open up in my online class, and I actually say, online classes aren't for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
That, you might be better served to have
Yeah.
a face-to-face
I do that
course.
in my welcome too.
They definitely need to be self-motivated, self-disciplined.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's a
And-
different format.
Yes, and different requirements of the person, of the student, and student characteristics. And so that leads us quite well, thank you for the transition, to effective communication about what they are going to need. And we just covered prospective students in our discussion of the above. So we can go on to I think what Julia's talking about, be clear with your goals, your expectations, what they need to bring to the course, what directions they're going to have, but at the same time, I put in parentheses, concise. So clear doesn't mean they need 3 pages of directions as much as it means as very clear cut. But they're not going to read a lot of stuff. I don't see the students scrolling down page after page on the computer. So bullet points, and this brings us to the next point of visual cues. Very short bullet points of the top 5, 10, whatever competencies and personality traits they're going to need to continue. And I would take Dr. Schroeder's example if I were doing one myself, and that is, make sure this class is for you, because nobody's going to be taking attendance every day, and you're going to have to really keep yourself to the grindstone if you're going to succeed. Things you do want to talk about in terms of the syllabus very clearly, not that they should, again, a lot of this is just extra stress on things that you already do in an in-class class. Due dates, and what you're going to do if those due dates are missed in terms of late work. What is your policy? Make sure it's something that you can live with. Sometimes, and I've been through this in my own courses, I've had to change some policies because I thought they sounded really good and really strict and wonderful, and then I couldn't do it, and so the next semester I had to kind of revise a couple of things because I want it to be something that's going to be contract and be able to be stuck to. Grading criteria and rubrics for every individual assignment, since you don't get the face-to-face explanation, just really clearly explain those rubrics. Perhaps most importantly, number 3, so I don't know why I stuck it in the middle, but instructor availability and turnaround time. And I put there in capital letters, respond, respond, respond. And I believe our new policy, 24 hours, right, Dr. Schroeder? And that's a minimum, 24 hours to respond to an email or to a voicemail of any sort. And I would say online even more so, just because that's it. That they would feel so lost. If I were an online student and I had a problem that I had taken the time to email about, send a private message, I would just feel lost without knowing that there's ever going to be that face-to-face. If I was just kind of out there and didn't get a response, and then you're going to the computer and checking all the time, and there's nothing there, I would see frustration.
Here's the deal. I'm going to throw something in here again, because I've been doing this for
so
so many
years.
years.
Go right ahead. That's why I
For
like
instance,
having you here.
Okay, this weekend, right? We had a 3-day weekend, and I had a lot going on. Sunday, I get an email from a student wanting an enrollment request to the course. Now, the student has signed up for the class, but had never bothered going online yet. And all of a sudden, Sunday, well, could you accept my enrollment in the class? Now, I'm hoping this isn't the student that contacted her and said, I can't get in Blackboard when this student should have enrolled on August 18th. You understand what I'm saying? And all of a sudden, Sunday, it's like, get with it, Miss Bishop, accept this enrollment so I can get over there and,
They're going
So I'm going to say, once in a while, and he wants me within 24 hours. Thank you. When I've been waiting 3 weeks for him.
I can understand your frustration with that particular student. In general terms, I would say, respond.
I understand, but then what I'm trying to say
Within
is, this may be
24
who
hours.
contacted her, I don't know. But, and she has no way of knowing that, well, since August 18th, this kid just decided on Sunday to email Janice and say, can you accept my enrollment so I can get on Blackboard? You see what I'm saying? I mean, unless she would contact me and say, does this name ring a bell? I'm just saying,
The
Like,
person
come
probably
on
won't be in
now.
your class very long.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I figure about my student.
Yeah,
Emailed
that's
me
right.
This morning.
But-
Frustrating, because
They're not
it
too
is going to get
serious,
frustrating,
depending
and
what
those
it
are
is.
the things to consider in general. When you run into a problem in an online class, I think frustration is going to build even more quickly than it would in a face-to-face class, and so they are going to be
Both
easier
ways.
to. Absolutely, both ways.
Sometimes it's very difficult to find out about the problem in time. Even with students who I've got time with every single day of the week, they'll still let things fester and not ask for help when they should be. And that would be my big concern with online when you don't have face-to-face contact. They don't feel they have a relationship with you, they feel as if they don't know you, obviously. And my worry would be that it gets even worse and even bigger problems.
And you can't, in a class, face-to-face class, I hope that I can see within a few seconds of frustration. If I look at a student, I can tell they don't get it, they're frustrated, they're mad at me, something's wrong, you know, and I can do something to correct it right then. But when they're sitting at the other side of the computer, if they don't take the initiative, then
But
there
if they
isn't.
get in right away, I think I know that pretty quickly, and they know it too, because I have so many assignments due. So within the first week, and I had several students who dropped mine, and they said, I think your suggestion that maybe I need a one-on-one in your letter is correct.
Okay.
And so then they still had time to drop if they found an open section. But if you have enough assignments, I think you can tell.
And that's an example
And they can tell too.
of effective communication and early assignments and early practice up front can make it okay, can make it go more
But no, the
smoothly.
gentleman that emailed me this morning missed all that. So.
Some other tidbits of advice that I've run across in asking people, online etiquette, might want to talk about that just to prevent any issues down
That's
the road.
actually a requirement. I mean, that's something that the accreditation will be looking at. And in the assessments we've been going over, we're making sure people have that.
Okay.
And the committee that's coming here, they'll look for that. You have to have that in an online class.
Yeah, when you have discussion boards and you don't have to look at somebody to respond to something they say, you just want to talk about.
I had a student
Being
last semester
polite.
on the discussion board call another student a GD idiot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know, I don't think that would ever happen in a classroom
No,
setting.
it would
you
never
know?
happen.
And
people
so,
are more free to speak what's really on their mind. And I think he was right, but he has no right to say it, okay? So I just went in, removed that, and I put a big bold type thing in there. I said, no cussing online, no, read the paper on etiquette, and don't do that again.
good. Technical support. Where do they go if they do have computer issues? We had some good discussion about this last week. Call here. But also, just warn them in advance. I forgot her name. That was sat right there at the last session. Yes, Carla says that she warns her students, especially those with dial-up, if you're going to take a quiz and it's storming outside, don't start the quiz, if it's a time situation, because if you do, I'm not going to. And I would have never thought about that. But, tell them don't take it at certain times so that you don't get into a situation where it can maybe use an excuse for
I tell
reload.
mine to run CNN or Fox or something in the background so the dial-up system doesn't kick them off, because it continually refreshes.
Good, yeah.
Although if they don't have a high-speed internet, they'll kick them off, just from thinking they're inactive.
But just let them know.
And there is a tab now for help that
Good.
the Teaching and Learning Center is posted up there.
And like you said last time, it might not be something on their end, it might be their computer supplier, but it's at least a starting point for them. And once they get that first, bit of help, then somebody will tell them, well, this isn't something we can handle, you need to call. But they just need to know what that first step is. So that's good that there's a tab. And then updates. I added this one due to our discussion last time. Number 6, handwritten. Just keep updates with your students, and I would say that Dr. Schroeder's talking about, how early communication helped, and I would say consistent communication throughout as well. Even if it's just to ask them, how's it going, but have them send you something, periodically, when you can set that timetable, whatever you feel is necessary, but just constant communication with them. Any questions or comments so far?
I'm probably not going to send my students something, how are you going? Because most students, and even though this is a liberal arts physics class, they find physics hard. But there's lots of quizzes and stuff out there, so I think I know how things are going with them.
Good.
So.
Then you don't need just the chatting
And they
kind
can
of thing.
post. I got a discussion.
Do you
board they can
require a
post
certain
to.
amount of posts?
Mhm.
Just
Yeah, there's problems they have to post to, 2 per unit, yeah.
okay. Denise, a certain amount, like a certain number, or is it just?
I use my discussion board more for posting than anything.
And do they have to go
I
on
don't
there
have
a
any
certain
minimum
amount?
number, but
Okay.
if you pull up Lit 280, I think you'll be shocked how the threaded
Let's take a look at it.
discussions go that I have.
Okay,
I mean, they really like to feed in and out to each other.
okay.
It's incredible.
while he's getting that, we will talk, because this kind of does tie, all of these things tie in together. So providing practice is my third major point, and we talked about timely intervention. You brought that up. You need to find out in time if there's an issue, and I think that, again, Julia's comments about always quizzes and everything going on and discussion boards, and if there's lots of activity, and that's why I said in point A is think active, you know, whether they're problem solving, discussing, solving case studies.
Sorry for the noise of
That's
the
okay.
fan there.
The more,
And you know, something I want to add, you know, if you have a lot of activity, and I know Janice does some of this too, if you've got your whole class that seems to be having problems with a topic or whatever, that's the nice thing. If it's online, all of a sudden you can develop these other little modules and put in. Or if you just see you've got one or two students that just really don't get it, you can just email them something, just single them out, just like you would in a class where they might come and get help. And you can send them things that'll help them. I think online is powerful. If it's used the right way, it is probably more powerful than face to face. It doesn't work for everyone.
right. You would have more of an opportunity for one-on-one
Oh,
situations than
It's
in
time consuming.
class.
I won't say that. It's very time consuming.
Right.
Okay,
Done
like,
right.
go, okay, like, all right.
Where to?
Is that my class? Go
Yes.
hit the autobiographies, because that's where, you know, I have them start.
Okay.
And I have them post something about themselves. And then, so you can see where I started, and then they start coming in. But look how many is already there this semester. If you just scroll down, I mean, you will just be shocked. I mean, look at that. And they feed in and out to each other. Oh, you're in that class. Oh, I had that. Oh, I know him.
I
Or,
have that
yeah, I had that.
The one that
And,
said, hey.
Which
You
is
know,
funny, a lot of
back and
those
forth.
students I have, I recognize
yeah,
them.
and they go in and out
Oh,
constantly.
you just recognize that.
I got one that
Can
says
you go? Can
everything
you
is
go?
hey.
Can you go like go back, like, you know, spring semester or something? Can you pull
Sure.
up one of my?
Yes.
Do they
Other ones?
count, is there a counter on there that, you don't keep a minimum number, but is
No.
there a counter for it, just automatically
yeah.
records how many times a person
Oh
posts?
yeah.
If you
Throughout
go
the
to
semester.
statistics
Can I
in
course
Blackboard,
statistics? I
but
keep
you gotta do
course
it by person
statistics.
at a time.
Okay, it would just be interesting to see, kind of like, there's always such a close correlation in a face-to-face class between attendance and
Lit
grade.
lit
And
2A.
grade.
That
And
is
I'm
really
just,
I think
I
you brought up
bet
one
that
thing.
that
You
is
can
like
tell.
I want lit
attendance.
2A.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking that, you know, just to run the
Yeah, that's
statistics
lit.
on it, I
Is
bet
that
there's
the
a
fall-
very,
is that
very
spring
close tie
07?
to discussion boards participation
Okay, now go to
and grade.
discussion board on that one.
It's pretty cool, really, because you get students saying, oh, I did that, it didn't show up.
Okay, now
So you
look-
go to statistics,
Yeah,
and they have
and just
logged
look,
on for 3
see
weeks.
how I have them come in and out. Go to the one on
They tell you
stories.
they
This is
just
when
been
we do
working
the short
themselves
story
to
unit.
death, yeah.
Yeah, right.
And then you go into all your different things.
All right,
and they have a
I'll
little
let
bit
them
of
start posting what they thought about different stories, and then I will come in and I'll feed a question to them. I'll say, well, did you realize this, or were you, you know, did you notice that, or what did you think of this? And boy, look at them, they'll start feeding it back and back and back on those stories, and it just, that has worked so well with me, communicating through discussion board, you know, and I don't know, that's been a good experience. If you go to the control panel, yeah, we'll show Sherry the course. Now go to course statistics.
Okay.
Right there, you're right to your right, under assessment. Under assessment.
Right
Yes,
there.
there it is, course
Yeah,
statistics.
click on that. All right, now go back, start date, let's see what, was this a spring course?
Spring course.
Okay, so go January's, let's say 18. And let's go May 10th, I think that was graduation this year. Okay, now you gotta click your, yeah, click your end date, okay.
On a selected user.
Yeah,
No.
select one.
No, go all users.
Oh,
I wanna show her something.
Yeah.
Go all
Yeah,
users,
that's
I wanna
what's
show her
nice
something.
when you can see it.
And at the end of the semester, I will print this out. If you ever get a student want a grade protest or anything, you have got exactly how many times that student went online, how many times that student looked at the assignment section, how many that student went to course documents you had posted. If you scan down Sherry, see Sherry and it'll break down your course and what all they did. And then it'll go by student, see the different areas, and it'll tell you exactly how many times that
So you don't
student
have
was
to do an
online.
individual,
Like discussion
one
board
at a
here.
time.
Yeah. It'll show you how many
No,
times
you're
that student
right,
went
you don't
online
have to.
doing stuff in each one of those areas.
And it goes on for pages.
Yeah,
It's just-
and you know, you could basically, I mean, if they want a grade protest, you've got proof right there on their participation and what they did, and, you know, if they say, well, I couldn't do this and I couldn't do that, I'd say, well, you didn't even attempt it, because I've got,
I had a student who said they
Nice.
were doing all the quizzes and all the assignments online, and the blackboard was losing all of them.
uh-huh,
And I went in to look, and he'd been in the course 2 times. The day I
Yeah.
got everybody enrolled,
Exactly.
and the day
Exactly.
I went through and
That's
showed
it.
everybody where everything was at blackboard, and those were the 2 days he was in there.
yeah, exactly. Anyway, there
Okay.
you go. I don't know if that helped. Maybe it
No,
did.
that did, that
Yeah,
was me.
I found it
Hope it
very
helps.
interesting.
Oh.
I've never seen that.
Oh, you hadn't seen that? Oh,
No.
okay.
You can see what time of day they're getting in and looking at things. There's a lot of material.
Okay, so we looked at the discussion board. Back to point B though, I said they're early and often, and early, what you're talking about before the course even really gets started. I saw Jane Bryant, I looked at hers, and she's got, just to get going in the course, and probably most of you do something similar, she has them go to this section, go to messages and send me a private message, and go to quizzes and take the quiz on, and I mean, it's real simple stuff, it's not real content, but they go through the process of taking a quiz and submitting a quiz and sending a private message if they need to, and so that's practice just navigating the website and dealing with the technology. If you did want to do something, if you planned on doing a lot of videos or a lot of thing that would require a lot of technology on their end, then I would say practice that too. Have just a silly video or something that would have the same basic requirements, so they would know if they needed to upgrade something or if it was going to be beyond their capabilities. There are, the discussion boards, there are online tutorials available. Some of them cost money, but there are sites out there that you could hook up to. Some of them probably don't cost money, but always, of course, check the links first. Make sure that anything you put up, whether it's internal links or external links, are going to work. And just because they work when you put them up, doesn't necessarily mean they're going to work tomorrow. So, again, that's something just time-consuming check all the time. Scott Elliott here in the math department, he does a lot of online courses, and he has the screencasts that are very interesting as a supplement to his lectures and his lecture notes that students can get if they really need to. Sometimes it just helps to see the instructor working through a problem on a board, and I watched one of his a couple of weeks ago, and it was good, and it was very informative and helped. He said not all the students need that, but for those that do, it's there and it's another tool that they can use. So that's another way that they can provide practice. And then he'll put a practice problem right there if you haven't seen it. You know, it's just like a chalkboard on the computer screen, and he'll have his problem and then give the students time to work it, and then he'll work it. And it's just like being there. It's amazing. So.
He used Camtasia to do that.
Yes, wasn't Scott, it was,
That particular one I watched
was it?
wasn't Scott,
Okay.
but Scott does them too.
okay.
So yes,
I just learned how to do that. That is neat.
Isn't
I
it?
have some of that in my physics class.
working
You know what's-
problems.
Oh, yeah, and the nice thing about it's better than the instructor, because there's no instructor to distract them.
Let me see if I have a link to that one
Okay.
in my mail.
He's gonna look for that if that's okay.
Oh, sure. It's in my PHS 105.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So,
It's the
he's-
the one I have this semester.
Okay. Actually, I've got
The V1 for
This-
fall or V2, it doesn't matter.
this one here.
For fall, yeah.
Follow this, okay.
Go under the assignment tab.
Okay.
And I actually even had it nested posted, and I told them when I added these early on.
so there's
Go under
external links.
introduction, unit 1.
Okay.
No, click on the folder at the
Oh,
top. Okay, see, I have that on there, and that's all the points they need to do, to try to remind them. Okay, go to chapter 3, and I told them how to get here, so they know. Chapter 3, and I told them go down to the bottom of the page. Bottom. Okay, see the linear motion problem?
Mm-hmm.
Click on that. There should be 2 different ones, you can do either one.
Okay.
Start there with a little physics.
Yeah. Just learn a little physics.
An object is dropped from rest from a very high cliff. The acceleration due to gravity on the Earth is approximately 9.81 meters per second squared. To make our math a little easier, we're going to round that off to 10 meters per second squared. So the pull of the object by the Earth then will be about 10 meters per second squared, and it will pull the object vertically downward. Part A of the problem then is saying, what is the velocity of the object the moment it is released? Now, that would be initially, as we released it, note that we released it from rest. That's very important here, because that means it had no initial velocity or speed that was imparted to the object. So, part A, what is the velocity of the object the moment it is released? It would then have to be 0 meters per second.
My husband, I had him listen to this, he
What
said,
is
I've
the
never
velocity
heard you talk
of the
so
object?
slow. That's what's hard about this, because I'm trying to be real succinct. I said, I don't usually talk this slow, you know that.
That means that
No video.
each second
But isn't it nice, because you're all focused on the problem?
Yeah.
If I've got something funky on that day, or my hair looks weird, you don't see that.
If we did that at the time,
You can do it Sunday morning without even getting dressed.
That's right. And I probably wasn't very dressed when I did
would
this.
have to be
Okay.
20.
But yeah, I mean, that's,
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then I've
That
got
is
another one where I show them the steps, probably what Scott did, where you're actually working out the steps of the problem.
Yep.
Yeah, so it is nice, because you're all focused on that.
So that's a tool that's available for practice. Useful tool. And then the final category, step of the process for today at least, is the discussion board, or that's one means of assessment, but it seems to be the most popular and maybe the most beneficial in terms of, we can see statistically, how many times, and it's just like attendance, I think, what I was making that point, in a face-to-face class, that is basically how they attend in an online class, is just getting involved, getting onto the site, being engaged, whether it's just checking to see if there's anything new or seeing what other people have posted. 3 specific ways that you can use the discussion board for each student that I've come across so far. One is that students can actually lead a discussion. So Janice said earlier that she'll post a question, what's your favorite story? And then maybe a student can take off of that and actually lead the discussion and facilitate and be sort of the coordinator of everyone's responses. And that's a good responsibility for them to have. It forces, at least for that particular unit, it's kind of like if you have a student give a presentation over Chapter 2 in a face-to-face class. They're responsible for that. So they learn even more that way. Secondly, they just simply respond to each other, and read what other people write, and you can have some people put a minimum number of what they have to do, some people don't. It can work either way. And thirdly, students pose a question. This is also Scott Elliott's idea. He calls it Muddiest Points. And they pose a question about a topic that they didn't understand, either in their readings or in a lecture or anything from a particular topic. I like just...
And they're not shy about that. I get a lot of that when we get to Hamlet. They're not shy about saying, I didn't really understand this, and what did you think? And I always let them respond to each other a couple times before I come in with my response, because I really want them to do critical thinking, even though it's online. I want to foster that concept of critical thinking, And
we watched a conference in this room this summer on assessment, and again, the discussion board, it was for an online activity that they were doing out of the library. I don't know if you saw that one or not, but and just through having her students post throughout a research project, she could see common threads. And individual students, like this one girl, was so caught up in the overwhelming amount of books on her topic, and that was one of the first things she posted. And she didn't even realize what she was saying, but she was just talking about, there's so many books here, I don't even know where to start. And she didn't realize that she was getting on one of the main points of research, which was, to eliminate and choose appropriate material. And so then by the end, she was still kind of stuck on that same theme. And so for an individual student's evaluation, she could address that with her individually, more one-on-one, than even she probably ever would have been able to do in a face-to-face meeting, all through the discussion board. But in terms of assessment of a course, which I'm going to switch hats here and ask you to think about for as you do these online, you can look for common, in discussions, you can look for common issues, common things, Scott's Muddiest Points, what perhaps is not getting clear or getting through to a majority of students. Then we can look at revising some of the techniques or some of the online practices or some of just the pedagogy decisions that might affect that. And that's assessment of course rather than the students. But it works both ways, and the discussion board is invaluable for both of those. And these statistics are great. I'm excited about that. Quizzes and exams, normally they have some sort of a time frame to them, both in terms, I've heard in terms of how long you have to take it. Once you get on, you may only have 60 minutes, you may have 30, whatever, and the instructor gets to set that time limit. But there's also a certain amount of time that the student can have to go and log on to take that quiz, I think. You may have, from the assigned due date, you have 3 days, and at that point, it's gone from the site.
Right, that's what I mean,
3 days. So, and then you have to think about your policy in terms of, are you going to, and I don't know if I'll get the term right, but what I said was reload it if something would happen, the storm situation, or if whatever, reset it. Reset, okay. Sorry about that. Reset it if it goes away, and how you're going to feel about that. And again, make sure it's a policy that you can live with. If you want to, be hard and say, I'm not going to reload or reset no matter what, then be ready to be able to follow through with that.
everybody gets one reset.
Okay, see, you get one, so.
I want to add to that point that 3 days, I typically have a 2-day window on my items, and after I taught my class online, which the first time was last spring, I asked them, I said, had them give me input on a survey. The largest complaint was, why do you always have your 2-day window and it never includes a weekend? I mean, that was number one. So now I've started overlapping into the weekend. Sometimes you can't, depending on the due date. But
That's
that was
good
a
feedback.
biggie.
Yeah.
And they're online usually on the weekend.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. Mine are either set for Friday or Monday, and then it goes over the
That's what
weekend.
I've changed to.
And it goes over the weekend.
Good point, you hadn't even thought about that. And finally, there are surveys, for whatever value they are, you can get their feelings. We might get input, like what you just said, from a survey. How did you feel about it? What were the, just kind of the overall attitude about it, more so than hard data, but they're still good for assessment purposes. And that's what I have. And if you have any questions, comments, if you want to look at any more examples from those of you who are here, we still have about 10 minutes if you want it.
Well, the one thing I'm working on right now is my online etiquette statements.
Okay.
And I haven't put it onto the syllabus yet, the online syllabus. I am going to. I'm just deciding, because I've never had an online etiquette problem, never. Nothing like Lloyd, no, never. So I never saw, the necessity to do it, but now that we're going to need to do it, I've got to figure out what I want to say and how I want my statement to be.
So it's
I will
not.
tell
and
you,
I was gonna
Steve
ask.
McLaughlin is working on a tab.
Yeah. What I was wondering is there any way we're going
He doesn't have it
to,
there yet. He's going to have a tab.
anyway, we're going to kind of make it universal like we do many of our other statements?
There's going to be a tab up there, and then you can just refer them to the
Okay, then
tab.
that's what I need to know, because see, I've never had a problem.
That's what I was going to ask when you first brought it up.
I've never had a problem, but I see now, that this is what they're gonna want, and so that answers my question, because I could talk to Steve about it, and, that's
We
great.
talked about it here last week within the department about it.
That's fantastic.
Getting a best practices for that,
Yeah.
and then getting a tab.
That's
And then
great.
we also talked about there's probably a need at some point to have a college policy in the student conduct code, or tie them back to something
Yeah.
that enforces that. SIU has, there's policies within the student conduct code. If you do this in class or online, you're held accountable for it, and because people are freer to say things online.
And we
May I
talked
ask
in
a
the
question?
last session about anonymous versus not on postings.
Oh,
What
no,
do you guys
no,
do? You don't
you-
have any anonymous postings
Oh,
at all?
no, I don't allow, if you go back to the control panel, you'll see where you cannot allow anonymous posts. You
Okay.
know, I always check mark
Some
that, no
instructors
anonymous
do.
posts.
Saw some value
I
in
don't
that.
let them.
Actually grade participation, so, it can't be anonymous, I don't allow anonymous.
I don't know.
Yeah. And-
Most
and-
people didn't, but there
And
were
there's a
one or
place
two
you
that-
mark, you know, you check on the control panel that you don't allow it. Let me ask you this then, with this online etiquette, because that's the one area that I've got to do on mine. We're early enough into this semester, is there a chance we'll add that tab to this semester's classes, or will they most likely start in January?
He's working on it right now, it's just. a
We may
matter
be
of-
able to still,
Right.
so,
When it goes
okay,
up, it'll
good.
go up on existing courses. It just,
Oh, that's
basically in
great.
the background, it'll be added as another tab and it'll show up there.
Oh, that'll be
It'll be
excellent,
on
good.
everybody's courses at that point.
If
Well, that
people
makes me
already
feel
had
better.
one, would it replace theirs, or would there be
You
two
might.
policies
It would give them
there?
a place where they can point to. No, it's not gonna override anything in their courses. It'll be a separate tab like this
Yeah.
help tab. We have, the contact information here.
Right.
And you can always supplement what's in those
Well, right,
tabs for your
go
own
back
course.
to mine, I wanna show
Okay.
you what I did, because see, remember this help tab's relatively new. Scroll
Uh-huh.
down over here on the right, just,
Okay?
yeah, I just want you to see, the rest of my announcements, I wanna show you part. Okay, right there, see what I did? I said there's also helpful
Uh-huh.
hints. See, I'm telling them some problems they
Right,
may have, but I'm
Yeah.
also saying there's also some helpful hints found in the help tab at the top of this page. Now, I've got a section in there about etiquette that they need to
Right.
follow, and when Steve gets this other developed,
Yeah.
I'll just say, there's
Yeah,
also,
click on.
go to there.
And
Yeah.
here's the visual cue of the highlighted text.
What's the chance of adding, and I don't know, because, you know, I'm not the Blackboard webmaster here, but adding the tab on the side with the others, where we have
Here.
announcements,
You can have
assignments, course info,
these you would.
have an
these you
online etiquette tab there.
You can put
These
any
you put in
there.
yourself. There's the
Yeah.
default ones they put in, but
So
you can
we
add.
could do
In
that,
fact, there's a
though.
number added here.
But I like the ones at the top. Now,
Yeah,
I
I
think
do
what
too.
happens with people is sometimes you don't notice them, but so that's why I've got that
Yeah.
down there. I wanna make sure, okay, look up there.
Sometimes it can be very tunnel vision about the information.
Because I'm tending to think they're
Well,
looking
this-
more,
I think
what's the
these-
assignment, when are the tests and all this, they're looking at the, you know, the tabs on the side, not as much as at the top, and if we had like both, you know,
Right.
they could access it either way.
Yeah, this one you can add yourself anytime. You could add a button here.
Yeah,
to
but
link
you
to
can
that.
Do that, you
You
could
can
take
copy
their
what's
help,
in
cut,
help.
yeah, cut
Yeah.
and paste, put your
Cut it
tab
down.
over there and you
That's
have
right.
it.
That's right,
Tab.
exactly.
With the exact same.
That's
thing.
good, so when he
Or
gets it
even
up,
add
that's what
something.
I'll do. When he
So
gets
you
it
do
up,
have
that's
some
what I'll
video
do.
clips.
Yeah,
Oh, a lot of them.
yeah. That's great. That's great. Well, I'm glad we're getting that, because that was my question.
Anything else? All right, well, thank you for coming. Thank you for your comments, your supplements.
And thank
Well,
you.
Have those forms we need to fill out? Oh. Oh, there are two of them.
What about these, in the same box?
You just put them all in a box and I'll put this out.